Ever get that feeling? Like time is just, I don't know, slipping away.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, where does it all go?
Right. Today we're diving into something pretty wild. How the size of things, I mean, everything from tiny insects to those giant stars, how that completely like warps our whole idea of time.
Warps our idea of lifespan, even.
Exactly. We got some amazing source material for this one. It's really going to stretch our thinking, that's for sure.
Definitely some mind-bending stuff.
So, to kick things off, our source starts us off with a really powerful image, I think. The sun. It's been burning for like 4.5 billion years.
It's hard to even wrap your head around that.
Right. And here's the thing. It hasn't shrunk.
Unlike, say, a bonfire.
Exactly. A bonfire burns out, shrinks down to nothing. But the sun, it just keeps going. Our source points out that the sun pumps out more energy in 1 second than humanity has used. Well, ever.
That kind of puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
Big time. It makes you realize how different our time scale is from something as massive as the sun.
Speaking of timescales, stellar life cycles are almost incomprehensible to us humans.
Yeah, talk about a long view.
Imagine a star experiencing billions of years the way we might experience, few decades. It's mind-boggling.
Totally mind-boggling. So it seems like size really messes with our perception of time.
Oh, absolutely.
And our source brought up how this whole thing plays out in movies, too, which I thought was really interesting.
Oh, yeah, great examples.
Think about, like, Ant-Man, right? When he shrinks down, he's suddenly super fast zipping around.
Right.
But then you've got a giant monster like Godzilla. Every move is slow and earth-shaking.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is that just a visual trick for movies, or is there something deeper there about how size actually affects how you experience time?
Right. Like, is it just a storytelling device, or is there something more fundamental going on?
Well, scientifically, we do know that different organisms perceive time differently. And a lot of that is based on things like their metabolic rate.
Okay, that makes sense.
Think about a hummingbird. Its heart beats incredibly fast. So its experience of a second might be completely different from, say, a tortoise.
Wow, yeah, that's a really good point.
Different speeds of life.
And then our source pointed out something even weirder. Ready for this?
Hit me with it.
We're the giants.
To smaller creatures, you mean?
Yeah, like to an ant. We're the massive, slow-moving giants.
Yeah.
Think about how an ant must see us. Our movements would look so slow, and our voices.
Probably just like these low rumbles.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about.
It really shifts your perspective, doesn't it? Makes you realize that reality is totally relative.
100%.
Yeah.
And there's this great analogy in our source about cranes.
Oh, yeah, I love that one.
So you've got those tiny cranes that are built for speed, right? They're darting around, super agile.
Right, like little ninjas.
But then you've got those massive cranes you see at harbors and stuff, moving huge shipping containers.
Oh, they move so slowly and deliberately. It's almost like they're in slow motion.
Exactly. And the source points out that it's all about physics and function. Smaller things are often built for speed, while larger things prioritize strength and lifespan.
Makes sense, right? Like a tiny bird flitting around versus a massive elephant that lives for decades.
Which brings us to the big question. How does size actually relate to how long something lives?
Ah, the age-old question.
Because our source mentions that smaller creatures often have much shorter lifespans.
Right.
Like a mayfly, for example. It only lives for a day.
Compared to, say, a giant tortoise, which can live for over 100 years.
Wild, right?
Absolutely.
It makes you wonder, does that mayfly's single day feel as long to it as our, 70-ish years feel to us? Is time objective, or is it all about perception?
That is a deep question, for sure.
And our source gets even deeper, suggesting that our experience of time might be a kind of enchantment.
Okay, I like that.
Almost like a way for our brains to make our limited lifespans feel longer.
It's fascinating to consider. Philosophers have been wrestling with the nature of time for centuries, and they haven't come up with any easy answers.
Yeah, no kidding. It's a real head-scratcher.
But we do have some intriguing insights from science. Take Einstein's theory of relativity, for instance. That tells us that time isn't absolute.
Well, okay, break that down for me.
So basically, time is relative to the observer. If you're moving really fast, time actually slows down for you compared to someone who's standing still.
Okay, now my mind is officially blown. So it's like our source is saying that maybe creation happened in an instant, but we're experiencing it in slow motion because of how our minds work.
It's a trippy thought, isn't it?
Definitely trippy, but also kind of beautiful in a way. Like, We get to savor this experience because of how we perceive time.
It definitely adds a layer of wonder to existence.
Absolutely. And I think that brings us to a final thought-provoking question for our listeners to ponder. If time is an illusion, how does that change how you view your own life and the choices you make?
Yeah, that's a big one.
Really makes you think, doesn't it?
Definitely.
This whole deep dive has really highlighted how much we still don't know about the universe and about ourselves. And it makes you wonder, if time is so fluid, what other realities are we taking for granted?
There's always more to discover, that's for sure.
Always more to learn.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it all, I think. So keep those minds open, folks. And until next time, keep exploring.
Keep wondering.
And most importantly, keep that sense of awe alive.
Absolutely.